Let's talk about Brexit. Will it end badly?
Well, it depends on so many. You mean end badly for the UK?
Yeah.
I think.
And for Europe?
We have deliberately taken on a risky thing from an economic perspective. Like I said to you before, the reality is the reason why the UK has done this is because of Conservative Party politics and the fact that the Labour Party wasn't collective enough or strong enough to try and oppose it. And that's why it's happened. Nobody really thought, first of all, that it would result in a decision to leave. So there's a lot of people sort of been scrambling around. And until this point, as weird as it may seem, I don't think that much thought has been given to the economics.
Right, but is there a turning back? So let's say there's a referendum in Scotland. Would it mean that the Prime Minister here could then come back and say, we have a second referendum? Or is it now a done deal?
I would like to think if we got to a stage where it looked like one of the consequences would be a breakup of the whole of the UK, and not many people talk about it, but there's significant issues about the Irish border, then it might start to make people think a bit more about it. And this is amongst the reasons why I think it is right that the Lords and Commons have a genuine fresh debate about what's agreed before the final button to actually mechanically leave happens, because there are all sorts of potentially big consequences, which in reality I don't think many people have really thought about, and a lot of it was a bit of a game until recently.
Is the government thinking about it? Do they have their priorities
straight? The government now has to think about it, because the reality of negotiating is about to start at the end of this month when Article 50 is triggered. So they're beginning to, but you know, there's so many areas to touch on. One thing I haven't said, which was a big part of my comments, as much as the trade issues are important, of even greater importance, just somebody like yourself, we have so many talented people from all over the world, including the EU, contributing positively in so many parts of the British economy and our universities. Arguably, for Britain's size, we have the best universities in the world, partly because we have many overseas people here. For our size, I said, Tom. Oh. And if we lose a lot of those people, then British universities will struggle to be as good as they are. So these are huge issues which the government has now, unfortunately for some of the people involved, because it's going to be very tough, have to come up with a really thorough strategy of how on earth we cope with that.
Jim O'Neill, interpret for us the optimism of Sir James Dyson. We all know him. I've got a vacuum cleaner in my house that I think he built for me personally. But this guy doesn't agree with the gloom. Sir James says, you know what, this is going to work out. We're entrepreneurs. We're going to be the United Kingdom. Onward we go. Interpret that for our global audience.
So on one level, I really like what James Dyson said there. You know, one of my own views when I reflect back of one of the few things I learned in over 30 years in finance is that stuff happens, including things you don't like, sometimes big crises. And the mark of, I used to think the mark of an analyst, the mark of a really good hedge fund manager is how you deal with things that happen you don't expect. And it's the same for policymakers. So given that it's happening and happened, the UK has got to try and make the best of it. And I think, as James is saying, especially in areas of technology that he knows well, the UK is, in principle, pretty well positioned to be at the centre of this in the world. But it means things like I've just said. We've got to make sure we can still access and welcome the world's most talented people, despite this rather imposing, self-imposed immigration target we've got. Hugely important, in my opinion, because otherwise James's hopes will be a pipe dream.
Jim, you lived out of a suitcase for decades. I'm assuming you've been to Brussels 42 times and, you know, let's say Belgrade 14 times. Where are the jobs?
Never been to Belgrade. Never been to Belgrade.
Okay, well, either have I. We'll meet there for a cocktail at the Four Seasons.
There you go. We can do our Snapchat thing in Belgrade.
We can do our Snapchat thing in Belgrade. Help me here with where the jobs are going to go out of the city. I don't buy for a minute that a CFA 42 years old on the up and up making a nice piece of change wants to leave London. Where are the jobs going to go?
So I think this is a really important reality check. Again, I've said this in the past, not sure with you guys, but in the days when we had previous debates about threats to London in finance, I used to say the biggest threat to London would be if New York changed its time zone by 5 hours. You know, you guys aren't open at the same time as Shanghai, Bombay, Mumbai, sorry, all sorts of other interesting places around the world where London is. And we have developed over the whole of my lifetime this remarkably deep, flexible labour pool, skilled labour pool that is perfect for finance. And all the housing and facilities that go with it. London is, I often call it the brick capital of the world. And to attract a lot of people that love that environment, London is the 6th most populated French city in the world, for example. To go and work in some of these places overseas in Europe, I think it's very unlikely, unless we have the most savage of exits in terms of access to the single market for finance, because of the reason you say. I think there would probably be more risk of us losing stuff back to New York than to any of Paris, Dublin or Frankfurt.